I shouldn't have let him inside. But the truth is, the moment I opened the door and saw him standing there, broad-shouldered, leaning casually against the frame like he belonged there, I didn't want to send him away. There was something different about him that night. Usually he just drove me home, polite and quiet, with that half-smile that made me wonder what he was thinking. But tonight, when I opened the door, his eyes locked on mine and he didn't look away. "My husband isn't home," I heard myself saying. I don't even know why I said it. Maybe I wanted him to know. Maybe I wanted him to be the one I couldn't have. He stepped closer, slow and deliberate, like he had all the time in the world. "I know," he said. That's when my stomach flipped. "You know," I whispered, my voice catching. He tilted his head, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "I've been waiting for this. For you." My breath hitched. Every sensible thought screamed at me to close the door, to walk away, to remind myself that he was just my driver. Nothing more. But the way he looked at me, like he'd seen through every layer of my life, every fake smile, every lonely night, it made my knees weak. I felt the air between us change, heavy and electric, as if the whole world outside my doorway had gone silent, waiting. And before I could think, before I could breathe, he stepped inside. The door clicked shut behind him. I froze, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst out of my chest. And that's when it hit me. I didn't just let him in. I wanted him here. His name is Daniel. I only found that out after months of riding with him. It started simply. I'd call a cab from the same company whenever I needed to get home from work, and somehow it was always him who showed up. He was easy to talk to. The kind of man who listened without saying much, but when he did speak, it was with this quiet confidence that made you feel like you should lean in closer. I'm married. I still wear my ring. And yet, every ride with him felt like this tiny rebellion against the dullness of my life at home. My husband, Adam, is successful, smart, and reliable, everything a woman is supposed to want. But over the years, we turned into polite strangers sharing a house. The kind of couple who talks about bills and schedules but never about us. And then there was Daniel. We never said anything inappropriate. At first, it was just glances in the rearview mirror that lasted a second too long. A joke that felt a little more playful than it should have been. He had this way of making me feel seen. Like when I talked, he was actually hearing me, not just nodding along. Sometimes I'd catch him watching me in the mirror, his eyes dropping just slightly, like he was memorizing the shape of my smile. I told myself it was harmless. Until one night, after a particularly bitter fight with Adam, I slid into Daniel's backseat, exhausted and angry. He didn't ask what was wrong, but his eyes softened and instead of silence he said quietly, "You deserve to be happy, you know." That was the first time I felt my chest tighten around him. Since then, something unspoken lingered in every ride. And maybe that's why, when I heard the doorbell ring tonight and saw him standing there instead of waiting in his car, I didn't feel surprised. I felt ready. The first time his hand ever touched mine, it was an accident. I was handing him cash after a ride, and his fingers brushed against my palm, just barely, but it sent a rush through me so sudden that I had to look away. I told myself I imagined it, that it didn't mean anything. But every ride after that I felt it, the pull. He started opening the door for me, his hand resting on the frame just a little too close to my shoulder. When he helped with my bag, his fingers would linger for half a second longer than necessary. And every time our eyes met in the mirror, there was this spark, silent, dangerous, impossible to ignore. I tried to fight it. I reminded myself who I was, what I was. But then there were nights when Adam would come home late and barely look at me, and I'd find myself calling for a ride just to see Daniel, just to feel that quiet thrill of sitting in his car, close enough to reach out, far enough to pretend it was innocent. Once he said softly, "You always seem sad when I drop you off." "I'm fine," I lied. But he didn't look away. His eyes lingered on mine, steady and knowing, before he nodded and said, "No, you're not." That was the night I realized he knew. He could see the part of me that was starving for something I hadn't felt in years. And when he showed up at my door tonight, not in his car but standing there, closer than he'd ever been, I felt every reason I shouldn't give in. And every reason I wanted to. He stepped further inside, his presence filling the quiet hallway. For a moment, neither of us said anything. It was like the air itself had thickened, heavy with everything we'd been holding back for months. I could feel my pulse in my throat as I leaned against the wall, trying to look casual, trying to act like this wasn't the most reckless thing I'd ever done. "You shouldn't be here," I whispered. His lips curved in that slow, deliberate way that always made my stomach flutter. "Maybe not," he said. "But you opened the door." The way he said it, like I had chosen him, like this wasn't just happening but something I'd secretly wanted, made my chest tighten. He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him, close enough that I had to tilt my head back just slightly to meet his eyes. Every inch of me screamed to close the distance. But I didn't. Instead, I brushed past him, pretending I needed to put my keys down, pretending that if I just moved, this tension might break. Except it didn't. I felt his gaze on me as I set my bag on the counter, my hands shaking slightly. When I turned around, he was right there. Not touching me. Not saying a word. Just looking at me like he'd been waiting his entire life for this exact moment. And then, as if testing me, he reached out, slowly, deliberately, and tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear. My breath caught. It would have been so easy to close that last inch, to finally let go of all the rules I'd been clinging to. But I froze. And so did he. His hand lingered for one impossible second too long, before he stepped back, his jaw tight like he was fighting the same war I was. Neither of us said it out loud, but we both knew. We were one breath away from crossing a line we couldn't uncross. The silence between us felt louder than any words. He stood there, his hand falling back to his side, but his eyes never left mine. There was something raw in the way he looked at me. Like he was holding himself back by sheer force of will. And maybe that's why I finally moved. I stepped closer. Not much, just enough that I could feel his breath when he exhaled. "Daniel." My voice cracked on his name. He didn't touch me, didn't even flinch. But his jaw tightened, like hearing his name from my lips did something to him. "You don't have to pretend," he murmured, his voice low, almost rough. "Pretend?" I asked, though I already knew what he meant. "That you don't want this." Something inside me shattered at his words. Because he was right. I wanted him. I had wanted him for so long that it felt like I'd been holding my breath for months, maybe years, waiting for someone to see me again. He stepped forward then, slow, deliberate, closing the space between us until my back brushed against the wall. I didn't move. Neither did he. He just looked at me, his eyes searching mine like he was waiting for permission, waiting for the slightest sign that I was ready to let go. And I don't know what he saw in my face, but something in his gaze shifted, like a decision had been made. The world outside that hallway ceased to exist. My chest rose and fell in shallow, shaky breaths as his hand hovered near my cheek, not touching, just there, like the heat alone was enough to undo me. Every nerve in my body felt strung so tight I thought I might break. And then, finally, impossibly, I stopped fighting it. I leaned in. That single tiny movement, so small yet so loud, was all it took. His restraint cracked. And just like that, there was no more pretending. The second his lips found mine, the world tilted. It wasn't rushed. It was slow, deep, almost unbearably careful. Like he'd been imagining this moment for so long that he wanted to savor every second of it. My fingers curled into his shirt, pulling him closer without even thinking. He tasted like warmth and rain, and something about that kiss felt less like a beginning and more like something inevitable. Like we'd been moving toward this for months, too afraid to admit it. His hand brushed along my jaw, down to my neck, his thumb grazing my skin so lightly it made me shiver. Every place he touched felt alive, like he was waking up parts of me I'd forgotten existed. I could feel the tension building, heavy and electric, each second pulling us deeper. His lips moved to my cheek, then my ear, and I felt his breath there, warm, uneven. "Do you want me to stop?" he whispered. I shook my head, barely able to speak. "Don't." That was all it took. His hand slid around my waist, pulling me against him. My body reacted instinctively, pressing closer, like we'd known each other far longer than we actually had. Every brush of his mouth against my skin felt deliberate, reverent, like he wasn't just touching me, he was learning me. I'd forgotten what it was like to feel wanted like this, not just physically but completely. The room felt smaller, hotter, every movement growing bolder, hungrier, as if months of restraint were unraveling all at once. And in that moment I didn't think about Adam. I didn't think about right or wrong. I only thought about how alive I felt in Daniel's arms, like I was finally breathing again. When it was over, the world felt different, quieter, heavier. Daniel's forehead rested against mine, his breathing still uneven, and for a moment, neither of us moved. It was as if we were both afraid that speaking would break whatever fragile thing we just shared. Then reality crept back in. I stepped away first, my fingers trembling as I smoothed down my hair, my heart still hammering in my chest. "Oh my God," I whispered, not even sure if I meant it as regret or disbelief. Daniel just watched me, his eyes dark, unreadable. "You're married," he said softly, not accusing, just stating a fact. "I know," I breathed, my voice cracking. A long silence stretched between us, the weight of what we'd done pressing down hard. "I shouldn't have come in," he said finally. "You shouldn't have," I agreed. But neither of us sounded like we meant it. Because despite the guilt clawing at my chest, a part of me didn't want him to leave. He took a step back, his hands flexing at his sides like he didn't know what to do with them. "This doesn't have to happen again," he said, though his voice betrayed him, low, unsteady, like the words cost him to say. I swallowed hard. "But do you want it to?" His eyes met mine then, and there was no hiding the truth in them. Yes. The honesty in that single word sent a chill through me. Equal parts terror and thrill. 'Cause I realized I wanted it too. And that scared me more than anything. Daniel reached for the door, pausing with his hand on the handle. He looked back at me, his expression unreadable, like he was still deciding something. "I wasn't supposed to tell you this," he said finally, his voice low, steady. "But I've been watching you for a long time." My stomach dropped. "Watching me?" "Not in a creepy way," he said quickly. "I just noticed you. The way you always sit in the back seat, staring out the window like you're somewhere else. The way your smile never quite reaches your eyes." He took a slow step toward me again, closing some of the distance we just put between us. "I've been waiting," he admitted, "for you to finally let someone see you." My chest tightened, a mix of fear and something dangerously close to longing. Before I could answer, he opened the door and stepped outside, leaving me standing there in the quiet, my heart racing, my lips still tingling from his kiss. And just as he reached the end of the walkway, he turned back with that same half-smile that had always undone me. "This isn't over," he said softly. Then he was gone. I stood frozen in my doorway, every nerve in my body still humming, realizing with terrifying clarity, he was right. It wasn't over.